The danger is quite severe. The problem with what the president is doing is that he's not simply posing a danger to the constitutional system. He's becoming the very danger the Constitution was designed to avoid. That is the concentration of power in branch.
Okay, that's Jonathan Turley, folks, who of course is going to be the lead counsel in the House lawsuit against the president. We'll get back to that issue with John Yoo, professor of law at Berkeley Law, former deputy assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice, and co-drafter of the so-called torture memos. I only bring that up because I think it's certainly worthy. And author of Point of Attack, Preventive War, International Law, and Global Welfare. Hello, John. How are you, sir?
Good, good. How are you?
Always great to talk to you. Let me start with Ferguson, though, and let me ask you this: a grand jury, they're not sequestered, and I know that whether or not you tell me if that's state by state or if that's a general rule. I know they haven't been sequestered in Ferguson, and this has been going on for months. And you know the news coverage of this has been: how could you not indict? There's going to be riots if you don't indict. The National Guard is called up. Is that fair? I mean, does that not put undue pressure, or is it not fair to the defendant because maybe the grand jury would have felt that, hey, if we don't indict, you know, there's going to be riots, so let it go to trial and let them decide.
I don't think it's fair. I think grand juries are already going to be pretty susceptible to the prosecution. You know, the defense lawyers always say a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich. Right. If the prosecutors wanted them to. So already they're going to be predisposed to the prosecution case. And then to talk about, all, as you say, all this other political pressure in the media trying to demand the indictment of the police officer in Ferguson, I think makes you wonder whether he's getting a fair shake. You know, in this case, often I actually think it's better for the prosecutors to make the decision, because the prosecutor's ultimately responsible to the people who are elected in Missouri, you know, the Attorney General and ultimately the governor. Grand jury, on the other hand, might feel like they got to give in to the immediate public pressure, and then they're anonymously gone after they make their decision, so they don't suffer any consequences for a wrong decision.
Yeah. Do you think? And what about the sequestering situation? It's impractical, right, to suggest that they be sequestered for all that time?
Well, yeah, I think sequestering can be up to the state, so it can change state by state, as can the size of grand juries and the votes. But also, grand juries can go on for months and months because they may not just be this one case. They could be lots of cases. So you couldn't practically sequester a jury for a year, for example.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's get on to the president here. You heard Jonathan Turley. And you know, you heard the president say over and over again he couldn't do what he's done. And now he's done it, and now he claims every president's done it since I guess since Ronald Reagan. I think he went back that far. What's your take on what he did?
Well, first, I think President Obama is misrepresenting our history. I don't think that President Reagan or President George H.W. Bush did anything approaching the refusal to deport 5 million illegal immigrants in the country. What they were doing in both cases is they were working with a Congress that was in the midst of passing immigration reform at that time to try to fill in gaps in the statute. So you've got numbers that are, I think in both cases, were never over 1 million, and were very narrow and limited, and trying to actually do what Congress wanted while it was in the course of passing the statute. In fact, what you could say is they were trying to preserve the status quo so that people wouldn't get deported who would otherwise be allowed to stay if Congress had passed the bill. So I think President Obama has gone way beyond what the Constitution permits him and what a historical precedent would allow.
Now, what can the Republicans do? And what I mean, legally speaking, we know that there's impeachment, there's defunding, there's can they succeed in court? Their lawsuit that they filed with Jonathan Turley at the helm, the Congress, is just about Obamacare, not about this. Could they add this to the case? What would you suggest they do?
Yeah, I had a piece last Friday, I think, in National Review that sort of went through the different options. And I think a lot of the options are legally or constitutionally available, but politically impossible. So impeachment is actually what the framers intended, for Congress to control a president like President Obama, who's abusing his constitutional authority. But impeachment's impractical. You don't have 67 votes in the Senate. You're not going to have it for the next 2 years to impeach President Obama. So I think a lawsuit by Congress isn't going to work, because the Supreme Court generally doesn't let Congress file suit against the president. But there is one actor who can sue the president in this situation. That's the states. States do have what we call standing to enter the court because they suffer an injury. If the government is not enforcing its own immigration laws, then the states like Texas, Florida, California, Arizona are going to be suffering the expenses of having to deal with more illegal aliens, with policing, education, healthcare, and so on. So some enterprising attorney general in a border state with Mexico should be able to bring suit. And I would think those would be the people who are thinking about it right now. I think I read that Texas and Oklahoma actually have announced that they're studying whether to bring suit.
And of course, a future president, the next president, could always undo that executive order by just issuing an executive order undoing it, correct?
Yeah, that's why this is no great boon for illegal aliens, because, right, they may be able to stay here for the next 2 years, but any president can reverse any executive order in the future. So they're actually could be subjecting themselves to deportation or prosecution by the next president, President Ted Cruz in 2016.
There you go. I wouldn't mind that at all. John, thank you. Great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's
John
great to be with
ladies
you.
and gentlemen. Thank you. We'll be back, folks, with prominent Iranian author Dr. Mark Benouri, talk about the Iranian deal being, the deadline being pushed back. But first, we take a look back now at a very historical feat with this hour's American Moment and John Glenn walking on, actually orbiting the Earth. Let's check it out.
He had served in 2 wars and flown over 150 combat missions. But in just 60 seconds, this Marine Corps officer would experience a ride like no other. At 9:47 a.m. on the 20th of February, 1962, Lieutenant Colonel John Glenn, Jr. of New Concord, Ohio, found himself sitting on top of an Atlas 6 rocket filled with 600,000 pounds of fuel. At liftoff, 360,000 pounds of thrust hurled the massive rocket and its occupant into space and America's history books. John Glenn became the 4th human being to enter space and the first American to orbit the Earth. For his remarkable heroism, President Kennedy awarded Colonel Glenn NASA's Distinguished Service Medal.
As our knowledge of this universe in which we live increases, may God grant us the wisdom and guidance to use it wisely. Thank you, Colonel.
Glenn went on to become the United States Senator from Ohio, and in 1984 ran for the Democratic presidential nomination, but lost to Walter Mondale. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.